Welcome back to the PFF NFL show Combine Review. The dudes have all worked out in their underwear in Indy, and we're here to tell you how good it was. We're going to just go through position by position and say some of our favorite notable performances, guys moving up our board, guys moving down our boards, guys staying the exact same place in our boards, all that good stuff. And we're going to kick it off with the most important position at the Combine, the one that matters the most, in my opinion, that has the biggest impact on my opinion of players, at least, and that's the edge position. That's the pass rushers, because usually 90+% of the time you better be a good athlete to be able to rush the passer in some way, shape, or form. And we'll kick it off with Bradley Chubb and his terrible 7.373 cone. I saw him on a list of winners. I think it might have been Bucky Brooks calling him a winner at the Combine. Obviously did not see that 3-cone. And I'm just going to throw this out here. Here's a list right now of first-rounders in the past 15 years who have run a 7.373 cone or higher.
A list.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, Mike
Read it. Mike's going to read a list.
This is how the podcast works. We tee him up, and Mike reads a list.
You haven't even said a word yet, and Mike's already getting into a list.
Yeah.
I'm getting right into the list. All right, so here are the edge players that have run. Not 7.3, 7.2 or higher. Jadeveon Clowney, Derek Harvey, Aaron Maben, Larry English, Quentin Coples, Robert Ayers, Adrian Claiborne, Charles Harris, Bjorn Werner, Dayton Jones, Marcus Smith, Tack McKinley, and Nick Perry. All your 7.2 or higher in the 3-cone and drafted in the first round.
I hear a lot of guys that win with power.
Not a good list.
I also hear a lot of busts.
Yes.
A lot of bad players, too.
So,
but I also hear a lot of guys that win with power. And I think Chubb makes up for it at least a little bit with some technique and some power. And is that long arm?
I have him as a first rounder. I'm just saying that was
It's not encouraging.
Not encouraging combine.
People calling him a winner, they're what, just focusing on the 40?
Yeah, they just focus on the explosive drills, which anyone can be explosive. Josh Sweat was explosive and was also a terrible football player. So the explosion's good. Yes, he had 36-inch vertical.
How much would it bum you out if you weren't allowed to see the 3-cone times in the Combine?
Dude, so I hate it because they don't even show it on NFL Network. Like, you have to wait 2 hours till after, so it's not even worth watching.
Well, that's why Bucky didn't know.
He probably. I hope that's why he put him on there, because he didn't know. But if he did know, shame on you.
Not everybody knows the 3-cone is the thing here. Not everybody knows, Mike.
I'm educating.
You're spreading the word.
It is the thing. All right, two other guys who I wanted to talk about who also disappointed me. Arden Key, just showing up at 238 pounds.
That's my biggest concern.
What are you going to do at that weight in the NFL? 6'6" also. It's like if you're 6 foot at 238, you're closer, but it's a wide receiver. It's not even like a tight end. He's small for a tight end.
That's what he was as a true freshman.
Yeah.
And that's my concern with him. He looked like he was on this Myles Garrett type of path where he stepped in as a true freshman in the SEC, was really good, build on it as a sophomore, but you have to build your body up as well. Myles Garrett showed up at 270+ last year and still had the crazy explosion. Arden Key at 238. That's tough. It's just tough to win with power at the next level. And I know hate to make the same school comparison, but Mr. Barkevius Mingo was also quite slight as well.
Also, Tim Williams. That was his big thing. As he suddenly turned up, it was way lighter than everyone was expecting, and suddenly now you've got a problem.
Speaks to maybe work at, like, you just can't show up at a weight that's not what you would expect. Like, you can't show up at that weight. Like, start doing the Leonard Fournette, chug some water.
Well, maybe he can't hold weight. Maybe he just can't put it on, and he really is going to play at 240.
That's still an issue. So bad combine for him, even though he didn't do a lot of the drills. And then Hercules Mataafa, I just thought he'd be a better athlete. Showed only 6'1", only 31.5-inch arms, which is very, very limited lengthwise. Did fine on the bench, but explosive numbers are bad. 31.5-inch vertical, cone at 7.24. I thought he'd be a sub-7 guy. And the 40 at 4.76, just not good. I thought he'd be a better athlete. But it was so tough to evaluate inside because you look like a good athlete for a defensive tackle, which that is, but he's just not a good athlete for an edge.
Yeah, a little disappointing for a guy that's made his college career shooting gaps over and over and over again and thought could make a smoother conversion to edge.
The one guy who did surprise me, no, Harold Landry didn't surprise me, had himself a great combine though, but the guy who did, Sam Hubbard, that 3-cone at 265 pounds, a 4.85 3-cone is...
He jumped 2
rounds. He moved up our
you?
board. No. So he's a 3rd rounder. Might be calling him 2nd rounder at this point, but I was that 3-cone matters, folks. So that was those were the edges that I was looking at. Obviously, the Josh Sweats and the Lorenzo Carrs of the world, they didn't even run. They were explosive numbers, but when you don't run the 3-cone, you're not even on the radar.
Dead to run it.
You're dead to be. I don't even look at you. The history on those two guys, though, they're two former 5-star guys or top end recruits. Carter was like the guy that replaced Leonard Floyd, same body type. On-field production, though, for Carter was never exceptional. You'd see some flash plays. We saw it against Notre Dame. But never really matched the 5-star hype. And then same thing with Josh Sweat. He looked awesome as a true freshman, but against the run, it was more of this, the explosiveness that you saw at the Combine showed up against the run on the field, and that crazy length that he has, a 83 or 84-inch wingspan. It's bigger than me. It's 6'10", but never really showed up as a pass rusher either. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing with Carter and Sweat. You're going to see those guys, I think, in first-round mock drafts. I would say buyer beware on both of those guys because the college production was never at the level of where those measurables were.
The one guy who I will say was interesting, who had ridiculous measurables here this week, Leon Jacobs, edge rusher from Wisconsin, only played 1 year at Wisconsin realistically and actually graded out fairly well this year. They didn't even let him rush the passer much. I think he's only rushed the passer like 200 times in his entire college career, but was fairly successful when he did that. So that's one guy I want to go back and watch those 200 pass rushes again.
Gotta watch him for sure.
That was all about because he ran a sub 4.5 at 200, almost 250 pounds, that's doing something.
Yeah, that's pretty lightning.
All right, on to the linebacker position where Sam's gonna get to talk now, and the guy that stole the combine, Shaquem Griffin, and he's a legitimate NFL player at this point. You have to. He has to be. I know all these NFL evaluators want to talk about that hand, but I don't think it's an issue. Not that it's not an issue, but with how good an athlete he is, I don't think it's bothering me at all.
No, he was a legitimate NFL player long before the combine. I think all the combine did was reinforce not only that, but he's a hell of an athlete as well. His problem, I think, the hand isn't even the biggest issue that he has. The biggest issue he has to me is that he is an edge rusher in terms of what he does best, but he only weighs 225 pounds or so. And the most amazing thing about his combine performance, so 20 bench reps with a prosthetic on his left hand, which was ridiculous, then goes out and runs a 4.38, which is the fastest time that they've recorded from any linebacker, which is the group he was working out with, going back to 2003. There were only 10 guys outside of the DB position. There were only 10 guys, I think, that recorded under a sub 4.4 40 over the course of the week, and Griffin was one of them. So he was running faster than almost every wide receiver for a guy that played edge rusher at UCF. But the most remarkable thing about the whole performance is that he was carrying a bit of excess weight, shall we say. He was chunky. Mm-hmm. So he was clearly like eating everything in sight to try and weigh as much as humanly possible because he's a small guy. So I think his problem is I don't know what you do with him because I think he's significantly better as an edge rusher than any other position, but he only weighs 220 pounds or so. He's basically a cornerback's body, the same body type as his brother, a twin brother, who is a cornerback in Seattle. So amazing combine performance, and he's definitely going to get drafted. I think he'll find a way to be a good football player. I don't know how you get him on the field doing what he does best.
I loved how everyone had to run to the take of, does not having a hand help or hurt with the bench press and the 40-yard dash?
It was amazing.
Like, is this good for him or bad for him, not having a hand? As if
who was trying to...
A lot of people were pondering whether that helped or hurt him.
There were people.
Yeah.
There were people that were saying that it was easier to bench press without one hand because you can just clamp that prosthetic there. You don't have to worry about grip strength on that side.
When that 2 pounds obviously helps with the 40.
Just be inspired and move on.
Yeah.
Be inspired and move on.
He also, that was a pretty wretched linebacker group in terms of catching the football. Hands were a real problem. He did not have the worst hands of that linebacking group despite not having one hand.
Yeah, he's great, man. I love that he's blowing up our system for a while. You wrote a nice piece on him, breaking it all down. It's a great story.
The whole linebacking crew in general, though, was probably by far the most athletic linebacking crew I can remember in recent memory. Like every single guy, it seemed like ran a sub 4.6.
Yeah, and there were a lot of guys there that I thought were athletic question marks that actually tested out significantly better than I was expecting. Dorian O'Donnell, a guy who I think a lot of people have pegged for basically just a special teams player only at the next level, actually ran pretty quickly. It looked like he could play as a coverage linebacker in the NFL, which is what he's been doing in college. And Sky Moore of South Carolina as well, I thought tested a lot better than I was expecting him to. At which point, when you team that with his production in the SEC for a few years, that becomes a much more interesting prospect and a guy who I think is going up.
Daniel, fastest 3-cone of any linebacker. That's gonna get you on my radar.
Dude, I think he can become a really interesting matchup weapon at the next level. His shtick in college was being a coverage specialist, and it didn't look from the tape like he necessarily had the speed and the athleticism to take that to the next level and be able to do it because he's an undersized guy, but apparently he does.
The biggest thing that I thought about after watching this combine, though, was if we're going to start an army of clones, do we clone the Edmonds brothers or the Griffin brothers? Because Terrell Edmonds ran a 4.4 740, a 41.5-inch vertical, and had a 11-foot 2-inch broad jump. Tremaine Edmonds ran a 4.54 and had almost an 11-foot broad jump. 6'5", 253. Those brothers are freaks of nature.
Well, you're going to want both.
19 years old.
You're going to want the DB body size, and you're going to want the bigger linebacker body size. You're going to want both those guys.
Try to take both. Yeah, good idea. Take both of them. I love the Edmonds are great. I mean, they were trying to figure out what to do with Tremaine. Here's my complaint, though. They were talking about it on NFL Network. They were trying to figure out comps for Tremaine Edmonds at almost 6'5", 253, and they're using guys like Anthony Barr and maybe Julian Peterson comes to mind from way back, but he's never truly rushed the passer. He has an edge rusher body, but he's a traditional linebacker. You can't just turn those guys into edge rushers at the next level. It doesn't work that way.
Well, I was wondering, is that like your value thing with the guard and tackle? They're saying, look, it's more valuable to get an elite edge rusher, so do you give him a shot doing that and see if he can rush the passer? Or is it just a case of this is a really big guy, he's probably an edge rusher?
That's like the Jamie Collins in Cleveland. They kind of gave him a shot there.
So it's not really the same thing. Jamie Collins was a 10-sack guy in college who rushed the passer. Anthony Barr was a pass rusher that actually went back the other way to linebacker. Julian Peterson rushed the passer. There's never been a linebacker who went into the NFL and then started rushing the passer. The closest thing might be Dante Hightower, but even then he did it a little bit at Alabama too. Tremaine Edmonds has never been a true edge rusher at Virginia Tech, so it's a completely different position.
I think Leighton Vander Esch is kind of flying under the radar in terms of being an athletic freak. This guy put on 15 pounds of muscle, showed up at the combine, 6'4", 256, 34-inch arms essentially. He's basically a physical comp for Tremaine Edmonds, really. And he ran a 10th slower in the 40, 4.65, but he had a 6.88 3-cone, Mike. 3-cone, that's the important part, right?
At that weight, that's nuts.
Yeah. So this guy had exactly the same kind of numbers as Tremaine Edmonds did, and isn't getting
Put him on the edge.
Isn't getting the kind of the recognition for it because there's only room for one athletic freak darling in each.
Dude needs to actually
group.
lose some weight. Like that's too big to play inside linebacker nowadays.
He said, Mike, it's a big boy league in the NFL, so we have to put on 15 pounds of muscle.
That's
so just
big.
lose it. Just lose it by the time the season starts.
Get back in shape, dude. Now that linebacking class, though, insane. The class, though, that I was a little disappointed in was the defensive interior class. Not a whole lot of freaks. Vita Vea didn't end up doing a full workout. Maurice Hurst didn't even work out at all with the heart condition. Which,
poor Maurice.
Gosh, let's pray for Maurice. Hopefully that doesn't turn into anything because we got a lot riding on you being good this year, Maurice.
I mean, that could be anything, though. It could be an actual heart condition, or it could just be they flagged in a regular heartbeat or something.
So let's hope. Like Star Lotulelei had a very similar thing at the combine when he was coming out. It ended up being nothing. So hopefully that. The one guy who had himself a day, though, Tim Settle, Virginia Tech, put up just a
He did have a day, Mike. He had a day.
Virginia Tech's social media account posts his numbers. They are terrible numbers. He tested awful for a defensive tackle for anyone, and people thought like of him as an athlete. And posts his workout numbers and said, "Have a day." So have a day, Tim Settle.
That was not not good marketing for Settle. Even more disappointing. You and I watched him together a couple weeks ago. We said really strong, right? He wins a lot, and then ends up on the ground.
Yes.
And then he was doing his positional drills, and he ended up on the ground during positional drills with no blockers. It's a bit of a concern. He's still really young. And I told you, it reminds me of, now I can't remember, the kid from Michigan that came out a couple years ago. Ravens got him in the 4th round, who just was
Willie Henry.
Yeah, Willie Henry, who was explosive on the field and beat blocks on the field, just didn't look like he really knew what he was doing just yet. I feel like that's where Tim Settle is. You're going to have to get him in the middle rounds. I would take him in the middle rounds, if anything, and hope he develops. But, yeah, those numbers were very disappointing.
My comp for him was Andrew Billings because
right.
Billings just have these reps where it's like he can't even stay on his feet. Like he's
Right.
this freak of nature with like just looks like an ox at sometimes. But then like they would run outside zone and he would be able to barely get out of his stance and just like be like 4 gaps over. And just like can't run with it. So that's Tim Settle to me. So
Inconsistency.
Yeah, that inconsistency is concerning. No one else. The only other guy who really stood out to me in the defensive line class was Harrison Phillips because he doesn't have short arms, and so when you do 41 reps with, 34-inch arms, I believe he had, that's pretty that's when I'm like take notice. So 42 reps with 33 and 7/8 inch arms that's real strength, and it shows up on tape. He's not much of a pass rusher, but real good 3-cone for his size, 7.28 at 307 pounds, better than Bradley Chubb.
3-cone and the bench, Mike.
He might be moving up boards as well.
He bench presses blockers as well. Good run defender.
Yeah.
Yeah, still doesn't help him with having an NFL position.
Yeah.
He's better than David Parry, though, Sam?
Yeah, well, that was my comp for him initially, is he is a bigger, more NFL-bodied David Parry. But David Parry is not really an NFL caliber player. He's a guy that hangs around on a sort of practice squad level. This guy, I just, like I say, I think his upside is like a Mike DeVito.
Oh. We don't say upside. Let's got that, Mike. We got that.
Fine.
All right. On to the running back position where Saquon Barkley obviously stole the show, but Sam, some other guys, one of your guys in this draft also had himself a day, Kalen Ballage.
Yeah. I think that was always coming. I think he is one of the more kind of athletic guys in this draft. He's big, he's fast, he's got the measurables, he can catch, he can run. He's just a guy who's never put it all together on the field. Part of that, I think, is the way he was used at Arizona State, which never really made any sense to me. They had him as this wildcat quarterback for a bunch of the snaps that he was running. They've never just given him the ball and let him be a conventional running back, which makes his eval kind of tricky, along with the fact that he's never managed to time being a really good receiver with being a really good runner in the same year, and is coming off maybe his worst career season. But athletically, it's all there. I'm really intrigued to see if he can put it all together at the next level and become a much better NFL player than he was a college player.
Yeah, he had a really good day. 4.4, 640, 6.91 3-cone at 6'1", 227 pounds. That's a legit 3-cone. And then a 10-foot plus broad jump. For a big boy, those are good numbers, especially that 4.46. That's moving. So, yeah, I'll say it again. Saquon Barkley, after his day, even though he didn't run a 3-cone, which don't even talk to me, but after his day, he's obviously going top 5, top 10 at this point. I'll take Kalen Ballage wherever he goes rather than Saquon Barkley top 10.
I'm kind of surprised you haven't melted down already at the notion that Saquon Barkley might go number 1 overall.
Dude,
that's a whole separate podcast for Mike.
That happens. I was saying that happens. I'm probably gonna get fired. I'm gonna lose it. It's 2018.
Just a tirade.
2018, folks. Also, a guy who surprised me, who I've been on the hate train for a while now, Royce Freeman, put up some good numbers, had a sub-7 3-cone, weighed in 229 pounds, ran the 40-yard dash in 4.54. I didn't think he was that fast.
Why are you hating on Royce?
He moves well for his size. Look, my bigger issue with Freeman is the times we get on Barkley for bouncing it out on inside zone and all that stuff. I mean, Freeman's vision, or his decision-making, we'll call it, hasn't been great throughout his career, but the peaks are as good as anybody in this class. And Sam pointed that out in our running back breakdowns. Early in his career, he was outstanding, went through a bit of a lull, finished strong as a senior. There's a lot to like about Freeman. I have a bigger question, I think, about passing game type stuff, not just catching screens, but what can he do anything else split out wide compared to some of these other guys in their versatility.
I just always worry. My thing about Royce Freeman is, so Stan said this before, he's 230 pounds, legitimately 230 pounds, and at no point would you ever necessarily guess that or think he plays like that guy. And that just doesn't work in the NFL. When you try to be a scat back at that sort of weight, you just don't have.
Having said that, I think it's so I said that before. I wouldn't have guessed within 10, 15 pounds of that weight if you'd put on the tape and then said, how heavy is this guy? I would have said 220 max. But so he doesn't run anything like a 230-pound back, but I think that is both a positive and a negative for him. He doesn't do the things you expect a 230-pound back to do in terms of plow straight ahead and get those yards that you can get because you outweigh the guys you're hitting. But he moves way more nimbly than a guy who's that size has any right to move. So I think it's both a positive and a negative for him. What I think he's a really good player and a guy that's underrated because he had those ugly seasons in the middle. But when you turn on the tape this year in particular, it reminds you just how bad some of that supporting cast in Oregon was. And you were looking, particularly in that first game, Southern Utah were destroying that offensive line, and Royce Freeman's getting to the line, and Southern Utah is surrounding him. When you're not able to get like a whole bunch of free yards because you're just a better side than Southern Utah, that's problematic.
Right.
You're having the running back has to do too much at that point.
I would say that the 230 shows up with him not so much when he's got a guy to go run through, but when guys are trying to hit him from the side and angle tackle him, it runs through arm tackles extremely well, and they bounce off him. That's where the size shows up a little bit more.
The one other running back I wanted to touch on, because we even talked about it in the preview podcast, Bo Scarborough, we both sort of thought he's not that special of an athlete. He had a 40-inch vertical, 10'9" broad, and ran a 4.52. That didn't show up at all on tape. He seemingly took forever to get up to speed at Alabama, had no sort of explosiveness between the tackles. It's one of those where it's like, where you got to go back and find that on the tape.
You saw it in 2016, I think. Late 2016, he started to have that breakout, and he kind of looked like a Derrick Henry type of big back that could move. And then last year was a big disappointment. Damian Harris took a big chunk of the carries, and it was supposed to be this big coming out party for Scarborough last year, and it just wasn't the case.
Also, he weighed in way smaller than I anticipated him being. He was like 6'1", 228, which is 10 pounds heavier than Adrian Peterson at the same kind of size. I agree with you. I didn't expect him to put up those kind of workout numbers, but he was also significantly smaller than I was expecting him to be.
Yeah, just all around. I don't know where that came from, but that's a go back and reevaluate sort of combine. All right, onto the position, though, where this guy, everyone talked about Saquon Barkley's combine. This guy legitimately won the combine. Tight end, Mike Gesicki.
He did. For
Penn State. Had maybe the best combine I've ever seen. At 247 pounds, he had a 41.5-inch vertical, ran a 4.52, was just explosive all around. I mean, he ran a 6.7 3-cone. His numbers were unbelievable. And I went back and watched all his targets over the weekend because I was like, where did that come from? And they didn't take advantage of him at all at Penn State. Like he was a flat route screen receiver at tight end. They had him basically running crossers all day long and almost never took advantage of him down the field. But when he did, I think he's going to be a downfield weapon in the NFL.
You saw some of those high-end plays. He caught 9 out of his 12 contested catches. That was best in the entire class. And you see the catch radius, when they tapped into it, the catch radius, and you could see those high-end plays. But I do think, he gets lost in the scheme just a little bit where some of these other guys like Dallas Goedert, who I love as well, gets, completely, used in every type of way imaginable in the Excel. So Gesicki, huge combine.
Here's some fun comps for you, Mike. In terms of greatest combines ever, one of the guys that's got to be in the top 5 of that list is Vernon Davis, another guy, also a tight end. Vernon Davis, 6'3", 244, ran a 4.38 40, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But when you consider Gesicki's got an extra few pounds on him, he's in the same kind of ballpark. Vernon Davis, a 42-inch vertical, so half an inch ahead. 128-inch broad jump for Vernon Davis, which is, again...
inch short.
Yeah. They're right in the same kind of area. I don't have the 3-cone. The
3-cone, though, is what's nuts because he could legitimately just switch to defensive end right now, and I think about taking him in the first with those numbers. Like, those are silly.
Jeez, Mike. Slightly obsessed.
I'm
Slightly
just saying, you don't run a 6.763 cone at 6.5 247.
Here you go.
That's
I
the
found
thing.
it. 7 seconds flat for Vernon Davis 3 cone.
Yep.
Jaceki hasn't beat.
Jaceki murdered
way
him.
better.
Yeah.
And so he did, but that didn't show up on tape with him. If there was a weakness, it was, deeper down the field, horizontal routes. You just didn't see that smoothness getting in and out of breaks. That would be where I was surprised. The straight line stuff, not as much. These really long strides, and those all show up. The 3 cone stuff, I feel like he's really well trained. These Penn State guys blew it up.
Yeah. No one else really showed out. Goddard didn't work out. Didn't do many of the workouts. Did the bench press, though. Led all tight ends in the bench press. So good on you, Dallas. All right, wide receiving class. And Steve, who is DJ Chark? And why did he blow up the combine?
He didn't blow it up. He did what was expected at the combine.
I mean, that, like, okay.
He was a deep threat at LSU
Mhm.
who ran deep, and they threw him the ball deep. And then he ran a 4.34 official. That's expected. He's an explosive straight line guy. Check. Good job.
40-inch vertical, 10.9. I'm surprised Mike's bringing him up because there's no 3 cone here.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't even know that he existed. That's why he doesn't know who he really was.
The first time I really saw Chark on tape was at the Senior Bowl when I was going through all the drills, kind of play by play with our playlist that we get from the Senior Bowl guys. And I said I have never seen a wide receiver with less of an idea of how to set up a defensive back than Chark has. He has no clue whatsoever what to do with the defensive back's leverage, how to use that against him, how to work against how this guy is playing him and get open. He just uses the fact that he's faster and bigger than the guy that's covering him every single snap. And I don't know at this point in your career if you can teach a guy that or if you just have to work with the basis that this guy is just a really fast, really tall guy. Run. Go deep. Go deep, and we'll get it to you.
And that's what he is. He's a go deep guy. Cortland Sutton from SMU was the guy that really caught my eye. I mean, so when I'm going through all these receivers, there's so many guys in that 6'3", 6'4" range. And you end up saying, well, he uses his body well, and he does this, and he does that, and he's not great getting in and out of his breaks because he's 6'4". Sutton was different, though, because you saw him show a little bit of shiftiness both in his routes and after the catch, too. He did a really nice job making people miss after the catch. And, hey, Mike, the 3 cone, man, 6'5'7".
Right.
At 6'3", 218 pounds. That is little shifty slot receiver type of 3 cone. So that
nice.
really caught the eye. And then the 4.55, 4.54 official, that's about expected. When you're that size, that's about what it looked like on tape. I wasn't expecting anything faster, but the 3 cone really caught the eye, and it was good to see that match up with tape, especially when you watch it so many big guys in a row because he looked better, and it was good to confirm it.
There was some crazy 3 cone times from the wide receiver group, especially those big guys. Like you said, you don't expect them to be putting up crazy change of direction numbers. Jamon Moore from Missouri also had a 3 cone in the 6.5s.
Right.
Dylan Cantrell from Texas Tech, again, a guy 226 he weighed in at, has a 6.56 3 cone as well. Some crazy numbers in those.
And so every year, too, there's always a guy that I watch. It always seems to be a receiver who I just don't have a strong opinion on, and that was Cam Phillips from Virginia Tech. I'm just watching him. I'm like, I don't know what he does really well. I don't think he's that bad at anything. He's just not special. And then he didn't do anything at the combine. I needed something to separate him. I needed something to have an opinion on him. He's fast. He's slow. He's this. He's that. He's still Mr. Neutral for me. A jag.
Just a guy. All right, let's go to the DB class where there were some just insane numbers being put in.
It's a track meet, Mike.
Yeah, that was
Mondays
wild.
are fun. Mondays at the combine are always fun.
Yeah, dudes in the 4.3s, everyone jumping 40 inches. It seemed like Troy Apke making Deion Sanders lose his mind. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that dude, so Troy Apke, when you run like in the 4.3s, you're usually like shredded. Like you usually don't have a lot of body fat on him. He looked like he did not look that like shredded. Like he didn't have strong arms. Like, he didn't have defined arms and ran a 4.35 and had a 40-inch vertical at 200 pounds. Like that was wild to watch.
Yeah. It was. It's a good run. Apke.
All right, Derwin James, too, had himself a day. 4.47 for Derwin, 40-inch vertical. Those were all just confirming what we saw on tape, though.
I made the point on Twitter the other day. He is more generational than Saquon Barkley.
Oh.
Let's stop using the word generational in general,
Yeah.
but I would say Saquon fits the bill more than Saquon Barkley does. He is the defensive. What did I say?
Saquon.
You said Saquon fits more than Saquon.
No.
Which
That doesn't make any sense,
Just
Steve.
cut this entire
None.
segment. Cut the whole segment. Mike. By the way, it's Mike that's taken over, which is a little confusing for as our producer here.
Oh, yeah.
With Taylor. Taylor's
yeah.
gone. Mike Quinn is
You're
in.
having another Saquon for
The
Saquon
new
moment
Taylor
right
is
there.
Mike,
The new Taylor is Mike.
which is a different Mike.
Mike
to
is
the
still
Mike.
the host.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike might not host very long
That's going to be a problem.
for a while, so then there'll only be one Mike. This is now the worst segment in history. Derwin James is the man.
All right, let's go to the cornerbacks, though.
You brought it back round well, though.
Thank you.
Where Denzel Ward moved up to CB1 on my board. I'll say it after this weekend.
On your board.
On
Yeah.
my board.
Where is this? Is this at your apartment
I have
somewhere?
a theoretical board that is laid on
Theoretical
that I lay
board.
on top of our board.
So there's a PFF board.
Mike just has a mental overlay
Yeah,
of the Hari
mental
board. Mike's
overlay.
filter,
we all work together on the PFF board.
and then Mike changes it in his head.
Yes.
But Mike has his own board when he's like, I disagree with
His
Sam and
movement
Steve.
skills are out of this world. Now, we didn't do the 3-cone, but
Come on.
I'm guessing just based on watching his tape,
He
that's gonna
looks
be
like
pretty
a
damn
6'6"
good.
3-cone guy.
I can see a 3. I can see a good 3-cone.
That was
on tape.
exactly what showed up last summer when I was scouting him. And I knew that he was one of the fastest players on Ohio State, and there was a lot of rumors that he's a 4.3 guy in general, and it shows up on film with his just straight catch-up speed. It was great. And then he's covering slot receivers with great quickness last year when they had Marshawn Lattimore, they had Gary and Conley, and he was like the afterthought in the slot. And it was like, man, this guy is good. You'd never see or rarely see that level of speed plus quickness. Speed plus quickness with with Denzel Ward, and loved watching that.
And then my favorite part of it, not my favorite part, but one of favorite parts, is the fact that 39-inch vertical. If you're a little undersized, which he was, just a shade under 5'11", you need to be able to make that up in some way, shape, or form. 39-inch vertical is going to get that done a lot of the time.
got to combat the big guys.
So this was the position group at the combine, as it always usually is, that had the speed in the 40s. Like I say, 10 guys outside of the DBs ran sub 4.4 flat. 9 DBs ran sub 4.4 flat. So this is where all the speed at the combine was. All of the fastest times this year, I think, were tied at 4.32. There were 3 or 4 guys at that speed, and they were all the cornerbacks. The one that I think is really interesting is a guy from Tulane, Parry Nickerson, who had this phenomenal interception that I posted on my Twitter. One of the best picks I've ever seen. Isolated deep down the field against the post, just leapt clean over the wide receiver to haul this pass in. He ran a 4.32, and that was important for him because he's a relatively undersized guy, 5'11", 182, but he's got some phenomenal grading for us, and turns out is extremely athletic. I think he's a guy that's flying up the draft board.
Sam, this entire process, he's been watching all the corners and looking over to me across the office saying, I'm really gun-shy on these short corners. They've burned me in the past. And now he's all in on Denzel Ward and Jair Alexander and Parry Nickerson. They're all sucking him right back in, all these short
You
guys.
can fight it for a while, but eventually they're just going to drag you there.
Jair definitely had himself a good day. He's one of the sub 4.4 guys, 35-inch vertical, 10.7 broad, 6.71 3-cone, and a sub 4 shuttle. Those all check a lot of boxes. It's almost like funny because you look at Minkah Fitzpatrick number, the guy who a lot of people say is number 1 corner or number 1 DB in this class, and 4.46, 33-inch vertical, 10.1 broad, and it's like compared to this class, those are bad numbers, but like
Still good.
those are good numbers.
Yeah.
Like for a DB at 6'1", 201, that's not bad at all.
Well,
so.
the important thing for him is those are good numbers for a cornerback. Like, forget DB generally. If you told me he was just a perimeter corner, this is all he is, those would be good numbers for a perimeter corner. So for him, I think that's huge in terms of what we've been talking about. Can he be Jalen Ramsey 2.0? Can you move him outside and let him become this excellent perimeter corner? At least athletically, he's ticked all those boxes.
Yeah, I don't understand. This is similar to the tackle guard thing. I don't understand the push to get Fitzpatrick to safety. He has safety skills. I think he could land at safety and be perfectly fine. Go give him a shot at cornerback first.
And the same thing was true with Derwin James as well. Numbers, even if you're just saying this guy is a pure perimeter corner, all check out. So those two guys, at least athletically, can both play as an outside cornerback.
And that's a college safety going to cornerback is a rare move. But last year at this time, we were talking about it with Obi Melifonwu, who's now with the Oakland Raiders, a guy who was a pure safety, but he was 6'4" with crazy movement skills and had actually dabbled at corner at the Senior Bowl. It's not the craziest thing in the world to take a Derwin James, who I said could play any position but nose tackle. Maybe see if he could play some outside corner and really get that high
this
value.
isn't like moving a off-ball linebacker to the edge. That's not.
Yeah, well, it's similar. It's a risky move,
no,
but I'd be either way.
They're similar skill sets.
DBs are covering.
Yeah.
DBs are covering. Don't
Yeah.
try to confuse me.
I'm just saying.
Linebackers are blitzing. They're not rushing the passer. It's a completely different skill set.
All right, on to the two positions we haven't talked about
There's
yet.
more?
The two that are by far the least important at the Combine.
Oh, that's why.
But some guys did have performances that helped to hurt themselves. Offensive line, we'll just touch on one guy.
I put the
and
sad
it's
face.
Orlando Brown, who
Oh, no.
not only was he one of the least athletic people there, arguably the least athletic. That showed up on tape a lot, though. You didn't expect him to do amazingly in the movement drills and that sort of thing. But when you run the worst 40-yard dash of anyone there, when you basically, your vertical jump at 19 and a half inches is you standing on your tiptoes as a 6'8" human being, that's not good. Just all around pretty bad for him, and then got yelled at by the coaches for not trying hard enough in some of the drills. So, oof.
He could not have had a worse day if he just keeled over and shot himself in the middle of the field.
Reuben Foster's was better. Reuben Foster.
Yes, Reuben Foster's was better. In fact, Maurice Hurst was better, and he got sent home with a heart condition. That's how bad.
Oh, if Orlando got sent
Brown.
home, he would still be in first-round consideration.
Yes. The guy with one hand benched 6 times more than Orlando Brown did.
There's a lot of superlatives for Orlando. Look, I think it's one of those things where he's had good tape. Mike did look at some of the, you wrote up some of the question marks with him handling speed off the edge and all that stuff. He was very well protected in that Oklahoma system. But when you talk about the go back to the tape, type of combine performance, this is like almost who cares about the tape. This is really bad.
Yes.
This is really bad for your stock.
I mean, we talked before about the importance of the combine is thresholds. And as long as you meet certain thresholds, you're fine. He failed all of the thresholds. He was beneath every single possible threshold you could be, including just being able to follow instructions in a drill.
And I had said before, the only way I would get back on board with him, as a possible first rounder or as a guy I draft highly, is if he shows up to combine and can prove that he can play at a lower weight than insanely fat.
And that
he would look like
that
in
may
Oklahoma.
have been the worst part of it, is that he
didn't.
He had slimmed down. He was 345, which for him is a reasonable weight. And if he, it was almost have been better if he'd shown up close to 400 pounds and had a terrible workout.
That explains why he can't move.
Yeah, and you could at least think, okay, if we can get 60 pounds off, and we might turn him into this viable player. But no, he was actually at the weight you would expect him to play at the NFL level, and had the worst workout, or one of the worst workouts you've ever seen.
Wasn't good.
All right, and the last position, quarterback. Steve, anyone do anything there that you even care about in the slightest?
Okay, Luke Falk had some horrendous throws. Horrendous throws.
Yeah.
I do think the only thing you can do is hurt yourself at the combine. The only thing you can do is be like, okay, you can't throw accurately, even if you're against air.
Well, this is what I'm
even those
saying.
new receivers
It
and
does
whatnot, it
mean
can hurt
something.
you.
I mean, it should reinforce what you've already seen. But if a guy turns up and still can't throw well at the combine, it is an important piece of the puzzle that you can look at that and say, against air, he still couldn't put the ball even vaguely where it needed to go.
It's like a 3-point shooter. You should be able to shoot well when no one's guarding you.
Yeah.
If you can't, you're not going to shoot better when someone's guarding you. That's not how it works.
Right.
And so a quarterback, if you show up and you can't be accurate when no one's guarding you, well, you're probably not going to do it when someone is.
The problem with your not-so-nuanced tweet a couple weeks ago that it does mean something is everybody runs with it thinking Sam thinks that throwing on air
that wasn't
is
even slightly
extremely important.
unnuanced. All I said is that it highlighted perfectly that Cam Newton was going to throw the ball 5 yards over his receivers' heads for his entire career, because that's what he did almost every pass at the combine.
Lacking nuance isn't a knock. You just made a very simple statement that people ran with when it's yes, true. There are some things, like Deshaun Kaiser was one of the inaccurate guys at the combine last year. I think that backed it up. So, no, nothing else really stood out there. Josh Allen threw the ball 70-plus yards in the air, and Sam continues to love him more and more as the Underwear Olympics continue. That's what I took away from this week.
I don't love him more and more. I just
You
think
do
no.
more and more.
No. Look, it's Baker Mayfield number 1 by
Wait
a
until his
distance.
pro day. Wait until his pro day.
Yeah.
Are you going to Wyoming for his pro day?
No.
He's going to make all the throws from his knees, I heard.
Well, in that video, by the way, there's a viral video of him hitting the crossbar from the 50 on his knees, which was actually from the 40. It feels
it's
like
50 yards, Sam.
it is,
to the
but
crossbar.
that's not what the tweet said. The tweet said
Liars.
from the 50. It feels like if you're gonna, come up with ridiculous things improving your arm strength, you should at least present some accurate information.
His pro day should be him checking down 25 times in a row, showing that he can make some easy throws.
You
That's
think?
what I want to say. The opposite.
It's almost hard to believe that you haven't been employed as a QB coach.
Oh, there is still time.
There is.
There is still time.
There you have it. That's our Combine recap. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back with some free agency preview coming up later this week. Have a good one.